Thanks, Travis. His article on the aquarium is actually part of a broader issue we do every time this time of year about Earth Day. And Earth Day was actually began in 1970 in the United States. There was actually an Earth Day in 1969 in San Francisco, but it actually caught on in 1970 when environmental concerns were rising. And here in Vancouver, what we saw was Greenpeace started, and Vancouver's actually given birth to many major environmentalists over the years. Greenpeace officials actually worked at the Georgia Strait when the paper was starting, some of them. And another person who worked at the Georgia Strait was Paul Watson, who was a Greenpeace activist and then later went on to found the Sea Shepherd Conservation Society, which fights to save the whales in Antarctica as the Japanese whaling fleet goes down and seizes some whales. They say for scientific purposes, but what Paul Watson says it's for the whale hunt. Vancouver's also home to David Suzuki, who's one of the most famous environmentalists in the world, and the David Suzuki Foundation operates on West 4th Avenue. And David Suzuki's one of the leading voices on the issue of climate change. He's the longtime host of The Nature of Things on CBC television, and in addition, David Suzuki used to be a biology professor. One of the things that David Suzuki's talking a lot about, and it's something we've covered this week in our Georgia Strait paper, is methane emissions. There's a lot of talk about greenhouse gases with the primary focus on carbon dioxide, but methane is actually 86 times more effective as a heat trapping gas. So methane is a problem, and one of the issues is it's beneath the permafrost. So if the permafrost melts in the northern part of Canada with the climate change, that raises the risk of methane releases. Methane actually only stays in the atmosphere for 20 years, unlike carbon dioxide. But if we're near a tipping point, the emissions of large amounts of methane will potentially have catastrophic implications. The Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change has not actually incorporated the methane from the permafrost in its analysis and observations about the risk of climate change and rising temperatures. The big concern is if the average temperature of the globe exceeds pre-industrial temperatures by 2 degrees. We're getting close. We're over 400 million parts per million of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. So one of the things you're going to be hearing a lot more of in the future is methane. Daniel Seghe, who's an environmental writer for the Georgia Strait, wrote about that in this week's paper. In addition, methane is a major concern in natural gas exploration because you get releases of methane in fracking operations, sometimes 1% to 2%, and that can have major implications. One of the points made in our paper this week by Spencer Chandra Herbert, the environment critic for the NDP, is that with methane emissions from natural gas operations, that it can have the same climate implications as the Alberta oil sands. So as we rush to produce more natural gas, the Premier often talks about natural gas as a bridge fuel that's good for the environment because burning natural gas actually has fewer greenhouse gas emissions than burning coal. So if you sell the natural gas to China, they turn off the coal-fired generators and switch to natural gas. That will result in fewer emissions in China. The offset, though, is that you have more emissions in British Columbia because of the methane that's released in the extraction process, particularly through fracking. So these are pretty technical issues, but they're very important, particularly from an environmental issue as we approach Earth Day. So with that, I think I'll sum up and wish you all a happy Earth Day. And for the Georgia Strait, I'm Charlie Smith, and thanks for watching WOW TV.
感谢收看今天的大温故事，我们下期再见。